Jaden Yuki, the hero with a hero complex. Though unseen since the events of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, this fan-favorite protagonist was originally known for his proclivity with the elemental hero monsters, but eventually refocused his strategy around his self-created Neospacian monsters and their leader, elemental hero Neos. So today, we're going to take a look at a Neo-centered fusion deck, exploring the cards Jaden might have used as he kept on dueling. At the heart of this profile is Jaden's signature monster, the one and only elemental hero Neos, which serves both as an attack unit on its own and is fodder for a number of this deck's most important fusion units. Now, since Jaden possesses the only existing copy of this card in the anime, we're going to back it up by saying he added elemental hero Neos Alias, which I've always imagined as sort of a kid brother card to elemental hero Neos. This card is a Gemini monster, meaning that it can resummon itself a second time when it's already on the field in order to give itself a special effect, which in this case makes its name Elemental Hero Neos instead of Neos Alias while it's on the field. So you can use this card as a substitute for Neos in any number of fusions that require him by name. Next, we have a newer card that I'm very fond of, Elemental Hero Spirit of Neos, which can be special summoned in defense position when an enemy attack is declared. If it's summoned in this way, it cannot be destroyed by battle. If it's special summoned, including by its own effect, Jaden can add a polymerization card or a spell or trap that specifically lists Elemental Hero Neos to his hand. Also, while this card is on the field, its owner can shuffle it back into the deck in order to special summon a normal Elemental Hero monster from the deck. So this card basically hands you whatever Neos combination you want to pull out of the deck in a single turn. And of course, we have the Neospacians themselves, with those being Neospacians Air Hummingbird, Aqua Dolphin, Dark Panther, Flare Scarab, Glow Moss, and Grand Mole. These are the same 6 cards Jaden used in the anime, and to date, they are still the only Neospacian monsters in the game. And with as much as Konami has flushed out the elemental hero archetype in general, I think it would be nice if we saw some new monsters in this group, and some new Neos fusions. But that's just me. All of these monsters are low attack strength units, but each one has a utility effect to make it useful while you wait to bring Neos out. Air Hummingbird restores life points to the user based on how many cards they're holding. Aqua Dolphin is a bit of a gambling card that lets you choose a monster from the opponent's hand and destroy it and inflict 500 points of damage if you happen to control a stronger monster. But if the enemy doesn't have a monster, or only has monsters that are stronger than yours, you take 500 points of damage instead. Dark Panther can target an enemy monster and steal its name and card effect, which makes it a pretty valuable card in almost any deck. Flare Scarab gains 400 attack points for each spell and trap card on the enemy's field. Glow Moss's effect activates when it's in battle. The opponent draws a card and Glow Moss gets an effect based on what type of card it is. For a monster, it automatically ends the battle phase before any damage is done. If it's a spell, Glow Moss can attack directly. And if it's a trap, it switches to defense position. And Grand Mole is very useful. When it's attacked, the battle is cancelled and both it and the monster it battles are returned to the hand, which is really satisfying if the opponent had to do a lot of work to get a monster out of the extra deck and you just send it back home. All 6 of these monsters can be used in a contact fusion with Elemental Hero Neos, which means that both Neos and the corresponding Neospacian are returned to the deck in order to summon an Elemental Hero version of the Neospacian monster from the extra deck. That's going to make these 6 Neospacian monsters the heart and soul of this deck profile. These 6 monsters do have a bit of support in the form of Neospace Connector and Neospace Pathfinder. When Connector is summoned, its owner can special summon a Neospacian or Elemental Hero Neos card from the hand or deck in defense position, and it can be tributed to bring back one of those same monsters from the grave. So, if the materials for a specific fusion are in the deck and the graveyard, this card can farm them out just by being summoned. Pathfinder, on the other hand, can be discarded in order to add Neospace to the hand from the deck or the grave, which is handy for keeping any of the Neos fusions on the field. Then we have Cross Keeper and Cross Porter to round out the Neospacian support monsters. Keeper can be discarded to special summon an Elemental Hero or Neospacian in the hand or grave, but if it came from the grave, its effects are negated. If an Elemental Hero fusion monster is summoned while this card is in the grave, it can be banished and its owner can draw 2 cards and then place 1 card on the bottom of the deck. Cross Porter can send a monster on its owner's field to the graveyard in order to special summon a Neospacian from the hand. When it's sent to the grave, its owner can add a Neospacian from the deck to the hand. Now, all of this Neo-Spacey stuff is great, but Jaden is, first and foremost, an Elemental Hero player. So, we're going to include a group of them in this deck, with those being Elemental Heroes Flash, Shadow Mist, Blazeman, Solid Soldier, Liquid Soldier, and Stratos. Flash's effect triggers when it's destroyed by battle, letting the owner banish it and 3 other heroes from the grave in order to recover a normal spell card. That might sound like a high cost, but there's actually an advantage to it that we'll get to later when we're talking about a card in the extra deck. Shadow Mist can add a hero monster from the deck to the hand when it's sent to the grave, and while it does have another effect, it's pretty useless in this deck profile, so we're not really going to talk about it. Elemental Hero Blazeman is great. When it's summoned, it farms out a polymerization card. Solid Soldier lets you special summon a level 4 or lower hero monster when it's normal summoned. If it's destroyed by a spell card, it can special summon a hero from the grave in defense mode. Liquid Soldier is similar. When it's summoned, you can special summon a level 4 or lower hero from the grave. If it's used to fusion summon a hero monster, its owner can draw 2 cards and then discard 1 card. And Stratos can use one of 2 effects when it's summoned. It can either destroy an enemy spell or trap for every hero monster on its field, or it can add a hero monster from the deck to the hand. With these 6 monsters, Jaden has all 6 attributes in the game represented in his deck, which is going to be important later. And last but certainly not least, we have Winged Kuriboh, a card Jaden received as a gift from none other than his hero, Yugi Moto. When it's destroyed, its owner does not take any damage for the rest of the turn. Moving on to spell cards, we have a series of fusion cards, including 2 copies of Polymerization, as well as single copies of Super Polymerization, Miracle Fusion, Neos Fusion, and Overfusion. Polymerization is your bog standard fusion card, we're all familiar with it. Super Polymerization, on the other hand, is similar, but can use materials from the opponent's field as well. It also happens to be a very story-significant card to Jaden, which is why it's here in this deck profile. Miracle Fusion can use monsters on the field or the grave as fusion materials, but they're banished instead of being sent to the grave for obvious reasons. Neos Fusion can summon any monster from the extra deck that lists Elemental Hero Neos by using materials from the hand, deck, or field. Once it's in the grave, Neos Fusion can be banished to prevent a Neos Fusion from leaving the field by its own effect once, basically giving you an extra turn with any of the Neospacian fusion cards. And Overfusion can be used to target a monster on your field and then give it the same name as another elemental hero, Neospacian, or level 10 monster in your hand, deck, or extra deck. So basically, you can sub a monster on your field for any fusion material card that you need that you already have somewhere else in the game. So all in all, a lot of useful ways to get fusion monsters out of the extra deck and onto the field. Fusion Deployment is a useful support card that essentially lets you summon a fusion material monster to the field or the deck, teeing you up to fuse it a moment later. Then we have 2 Neospace cards, with those being the Neospace Spell card and Instant Neospace. Both of these cards are designed to offset the major downside of running Neospacians. All of the Neospacian Neos fusions have an effect that causes them to return to the extra deck after 1 turn, but these cards remove this limitation, allowing them to remain in play indefinitely. The only difference is that the Neospace field spell affects all Neospacian fusions on the field, while Instant Neospace is an equipped spell card that only helps the monster that it happens to be equipped to. Next, we have some cards to support the Neospacian Contact fusion, like Contact Out, Miracle Contact, and Instant Contact. Contact Out can be used to trade a Neos fusion monster out for its materials if they're back in the main deck. Miracle Contact allows the user to special summon a Neos fusion monster by shuffling its materials into the deck from the hand, field, or graveyard. And Instant Contact lets you pay 1,000 life points to summon a level summon or lower elemental hero or Neospacian monster from the extra deck. But it can't attack or use its effects if you don't already have Neos on the field or in the grave. Then we have spells like Double Hero Attack and Reverse of Neos. Double Hero Attack can only be activated when a Neos fusion is on the field, and it allows its owner to special summon another hero fusion monster from the graveyard. Reverse of Neos, on the other hand, can only be activated when a Neos fusion monster is destroyed, and allows its user to special summon elemental hero Neos from the main deck with an extra 1,000 attack points. This just leaves us with 2 remaining spell cards, EN Wave and EN Engage Neospace. EN Wave basically lets you special summon a monster when you perform a fusion summon. If the summon used an elemental hero who was sent to the grave or banished, it lets you summon a Neospacian from the deck. But if a Neospacian hero monster is contact fused, you can special summon an elemental hero from the grave. Or, EN Engage Neospace lets you discard an elemental hero and a Neospacian so long as one of them comes from the deck and one of them comes from the hand, in order to special summon a different Neospacian or a high-level elemental hero from the deck and add a polymerization card from the deck or the graveyard to the hand. If the monster you summoned was elemental hero Neos, it gains 1,000 extra attack points. Moving right along, we only have 2 trap cards in this lineup, NEXT, Next, and Favorite Contact. Next can be used to special summon elemental hero Neos and as many Neospacian monsters with different names as possible from the hand or graveyard, but their effects are all negated. Plus, if the user doesn't control any cards, this card can be activated from the hand. And Favorite Contact can be used to fusion summon a hero monster by taking its materials from the hand, field, graveyard, or banish zone and placing them on the bottom of the deck. The newly summoned monster can't be returned to the extra deck, meaning Neospacian fusions lose their major drawback of being sent away after 1 turn if they're summoned with this card. That does it for the main deck and brings us to the side deck, which is where we'll include some old faces and most of the non-Neospacian fusions. To start, we'll say hello to some old favorites, like elemental heroes Avion, Burstinatrix, Sparkman, and Bubbleman. These cards were at the center of Jaden's strategy during the opening days of GX, so I like to think that he kept them around. But instead of keeping all their convoluted fusion mashups, we're going to trim down and say that these monsters are predominantly used to summon elemental hero Grand Merge, who can only be summoned by fusing 2 normal hero monsters. It gains 300 attack points for the combined levels of its fusion materials, making it most powerful when Neos is one of those materials. When it destroys a monster in battle, it can be tributed to special summon an elemental hero from the extra deck, but that monster can't attack monsters with an equal or lower level than it. Now, I can already hear some people typing that I got rid of Jaden's original ace monster, and no, I'm not a monster, so I didn't do that. Please give it up for the OG, elemental hero Flame Wingman, who, in addition to dealing battle damage when it destroys enemy monsters, inflicts burn damage equal to the attack strength of any destroyed opponents. Of course I'd never get rid of this guy. What are you, mad? But as I was researching this deck profile, I was actually really happy to learn that Flame Wingman can now be fused with elemental hero Neos to make elemental hero Shining Neos Wingman. Because of course this card exists now, as God intended. If this card is special summoned, which a fusion summoning does count as, its owner can destroy enemy cards up to the number of different attribute types already on the field. It also gains 300 attack points for all monsters in the graveyard, and cannot be destroyed by card effects. It also carries forward Flame Wingman's burn damage ability. To give this deck some extra utility, I'm also going to add in the Omni Heroes, with those being elemental heroes The Shining, Escrideo, Absolute Zero, Great Tornado, Gaia, and Nova Master. The Shining and Escrideo are like mirrors of one another, with the former gaining attack points for banished hero cards, while the latter gains points for heroes in the grave. Remember earlier when I said that there was actually an upside to the cost of Elemental Hero Flash's ability, where it required you to banish 3 cards? This is where that gets useful, as using Elemental Hero Flash's effect inherently powers up Elemental Hero The Shining's effect, which makes some sense considering Elemental Hero Flash can be used to summon The Shining. Like The Shining and Escrideo, Gaia and Great Tornado have similar effects, with Gaia stealing half of an enemy monster's attack points, while Great Tornado halves the attack and defense of all face-up enemy monsters. And while you'd expect Absolute Zero and Nova Master to have mirrored effects as well, they don't. Absolute Zero clears away all enemy monsters when it leaves the field, and Nova Master lets the player draw a card when it destroys an enemy monster. The last 2 cards in the side deck are here purely for emotional support reasons, with those being Yubel and Elemental Hero Neos Kluger. Yubel is Jaden's ex from another lifetime, while Neos Kluger is the fusion of Neos and Yubel. Yubel can't be destroyed by battle, and Jaden doesn't take battle damage when this card is attacked. In fact, when it's attacked, it deals the damage back at the opponent instead. This card does require a monster tribute each turn in order to stay on the field though. Not a great card by itself, it's really just here to get Kluger on the field. And speaking of Kluger, it also deals the attack strength of enemy monsters it battles back as burn damage when it's destroyed. But it also has some attack power of its own to give it some extra oomph on the field. And that brings us to the end of the side deck, leaving us with the extra deck. Or, since it's period appropriate and there are no other kinds of cards in here, the fusion deck. Now, since we put Shining Neos Wingman and Neos Kluger in the extra deck, we are exactly one Neos fusion monster short of a full extra deck. So, we get one random elemental hero to run alongside all the Neospacian fusion monsters. So say hello to my current favorite hero, elemental hero Sunrise. Sunrise lets its owner add Miracle Fusion to the hand when it's summoned, which, if it was summoned with a polymerization card and its materials ended up in the grave, means that you can turn around and banish those exact same materials to pull out a second monster. It gains 200 points for each attribute on its owner's field, and when a battle is declared involving another hero on your field, Sunrise can target any card on the field and destroy it. Moving on, all 6 of our Neospacian monsters have corresponding elemental hero Neos fusions, with those being elemental heroes Air Neos, Aqua Neos, Dark Neos, Flare Neos, Glow Neos, and Grand Neos. All of these monsters share the exact same attack and defense stats, as well as the contact fusion effect, meaning that they're summoned not by using a spell card, but rather they can be special summoned from the extra deck by shuffling their required materials from the field into the deck. Then, the fused monster is returned to the extra deck during the end phase. But they all have unique individual effects to keep things interesting. Air Neos, which is an incredibly rare card with a convoluted backstory, gains attack points when its opponent has more life points than its owner, with the amount being determined by the difference between the 2 players' scores. Aqua Neos allows its owner to discard a card to destroy a random card in the opponent's hand once per turn. Dark Neos can negate an effect monster's abilities. Flare Neos gains attack points for each spell and trap card on the field. Glow Neos can destroy an enemy card, with a different side effect for what type of card it is. And Grand Neos can return an enemy monster to the hand each turn. Now, of course, for all these units whose effects specify that they work once per turn, you need to use something like the Neospace spell card to actually keep these Neos monsters on the field for more than one turn. But if you can pull that off, some of these effects can be downright infuriating to go up against on a turn-by-turn basis. Anyways, moving on to the contact fusions that require 2 Neospacian monsters, we have elemental heroes Storm Neos, Magma Neos, Chaos Neos, Cosmo Neos, and Nebula Neos. Sadly, all of these monsters share the same end phase effect that the single Neospacian fusion monsters do, but each has a unique effect that triggers when they leave the field. Storm Neos can destroy all spells and traps on the field once per turn, and requires that all cards on the field be shuffled into the deck when its effect forces it off of the field. Magma Neos gains attack points for every card on the field, and returns all cards on the field to their owner's hands when it returns to the extra deck. Chaos Neos requires its owner to flip a coin 3 times during the main phase, and has a different effect for the number of times it lands on heads. If it's once, all monsters on the field return to the hand. Twice, all face-up monsters' effects are negated for the rest of the turn. And if it comes up heads 3 times, destroy all enemy monsters. When it goes back to the extra deck, all face-up monsters on the field are set face down. Cosmo Neos prevents the enemy from activating cards or their effects for the rest of the turn that it's summoned. When its effect sends it away, all enemy cards on the field are destroyed. And Nebula Neos lets the user draw a card for every card on the enemy's field, and then negate one face-up card's effects for the rest of the turn. When it returns to the extra deck, all cards on the field are banished. Now, just to head off any potential comments, you might notice that there strangely isn't a 3-material water Neos monster here. And that's because there isn't one in the game. Konami did make another Neos water monster called Elemental Hero Marine Neos, but this wasn't summoned by fusing Neos with 2 Neospacians. Instead, it required upgrading Neospacian Aqua Dolphin to Neospacian Marine Dolphin, and then fusing that with Neos. And both Marine Dolphin and Marine Neos are pretty underwhelming cards, so I didn't want to bog down 3 slots in this deck to accommodate them. But if you're wondering why there isn't another water hero, this is why. Moving on to our last couple of cards, we have Elemental Hero Neos Knight, who Jaden used against Paradox in the 3 vs 1 duel featured in the Bonds Beyond Time movie. It's summoned by fusing Neos with another warrior monster, and gains half of that warrior's attack points when it's summoned. It can also make 2 attacks per turn, but sadly, the enemy doesn't take battle damage from attacks involving this card. Then we have Elemental Hero Brave Neos, who can be summoned by fusing Neos with a level 4 or lower effect monster. This card fits very nicely into this deck profile, as it gains points for each Neospacian or hero monster in the grave. It can also be used to add a card that lists Elemental Hero Neos in its text whenever it destroys an enemy monster in battle. And last, but certainly not least, we have the king of this deck, Elemental Hero Divine Neos, who Jaden used in the final moments of his final duel with Night Shroud at the very end of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. This monster can be summoned by fusing 5 Neos, Neospace, Neospacian, or hero monsters, so long as there's at least 1 from each group. Although Neos and Neospace count as a single group since there were only 2 Neospace monsters in the game at that time. Once per turn, this card can banish any monster that qualifies as one of its fusion materials from the graveyard in order to permanently gain 500 attack points and gain that monster's effect until the end phase, making it one of the most versatile cards in the hero archetype, and a fitting boss monster for our hero. And that, my fellow duelists, is my Jaden Yuki Neo-Spacian Hero deck profile. But what do you think about these cards? Do you think this is the sort of deck Jaden might run with all the heroes available today, or am I way off base? Let me know what cards you'd have liked to see Jaden use down below in the comments, and then hit the subscribe bell thing so you don't miss the upcoming Yusei Fudo deck profile that I've got coming down the pipeline. I'm gonna get back to working on that, and in the meantime, why don't you check out some of the other deck profiles on this channel? Everybody stay safe and stay healthy, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye!